Thank you, Sakwi. Sakwi also led the meditation this morning, and she is a very talented lady. Thank you. And thank you, April, for doing the platforming, and Steve for taking care of all the technical stuff. We appreciate all that. Again, my name is Stephen Kaplan. Been coming here for a number of years, and it's truly an honor for me to speak today. I really appreciate it. I grew up here and I went to Georgia Tech and I studied chemical engineering, so a lot of my talks I try to include some kind of technical type thing. And today I want to talk about forgiveness. It's something I've been working with for a number of years now. And my title is The Forgiveness Factor. So I use that word intentionally because I feel like it's important that we take it very seriously. And when you use the term factor, what does that mean? So this is a definition: something that actively contributes to the production of a result. And I feel like the result that we're looking for is a better world, maybe peace, maybe at least the end of war. And this is a difficult situation that we're in now, and I think forgiveness is something that can actively be done to bring about the positive change that we need. The word factor is also used in mathematics. It's a term that is used often. The factoring process is used to solve problems, sometimes very difficult mathematical problems. So again, I think it's something to consider that we look at this. And I'll talk a little bit about the technical aspects of what I want to get across. And some of you may have heard some of this before. I'd like to put a little bit of different twist on it. So this is a depiction of the atom. You probably have seen this before. And the central core of the atom is called the nucleus, and the little things going around it are called electrons. And this is a very common representation of the atom. And by the way, everything is made of atoms. Everything in your body, you are made of atoms. Everything around in the entire universe is made of atoms. So, by the way, this depiction also is very inaccurate because the nucleus is much, much larger than the electron. And also the distance between the electron and the nucleus is much, much, much greater. So I talked about this last time, that if we could take away all the space in all the atoms of your body, what would be left? So if we could remove everything, all the space, all that would be left would be the size of a single grain of salt. If you brought some salt in, had people try to put it between the, it's hard to even get a grain of salt between your fingers, much less see it, and barely feel it. Almost nothing. Now this makes absolutely no sense at all, because we have a body, right? I mean, we're living, and yet there's nothing there. So something very interesting is going on with us. And we aren't aware of it because we're living. And even though I'll talk about it today, you probably will ignore this. It won't make much difference. But maybe it will, if you think about it. And it really begs the question, who am I? What am I? How am I? And one of my favorite authors, Wayne Dyer, talked about this in his, I think it was his last book, Wishes Fulfilled. And he talked about the body, and I thought he had an interesting twist on it. He pointed out that the body is always changing. So if you look back maybe have a picture of yourself when you were a child or a baby, and you look at that body, you look at that child, you know that you're in that body. But your body today is not anything like that. It's changed quite a bit. And the fact is, it continues to change. What we don't realize is that how fast that is actually happening. And according to quantum physics, the body that you are occupying right now, at this very moment in time, is completely different than the body that you were occupying when we started this service. Now think about that. You are it doesn't make any sense, does it? And that's the quantum world. That's what we're made of. Those little things called electrons, everybody has those. But they don't act like particles all the time, and they don't act like waves. A particle is something, if you throw it against the wall, it'll bounce off the wall. But if it's a quantum particle, it can go right through the wall. So we can talk about these quantum particles, and the electron, what is it? Is it a particle or a wave? And a photon, which is a particle of light, is it a particle or is it a wave? And the answer is that it's both. So this is what we're made of. This is what's inside of us. And it's totally upside down from the world that we know, the world we experience. And this gets even more interesting when we talk about entanglement. So these subatomic particles, we can produce them in a lab, and they've produced particles of light, photons. And they're produced two at the same time, and they're called twin. So the two twin particles are twin, and they're entangled. And so when you do something to the first particle, the second particle always reacts to what you do. You do something, and the other one reacts. And they always do that. Always. Every single time. But the really interesting thing about this is that it doesn't matter how far apart they are. They can be very close together. You do one thing and the other one reacts. They can be very far apart. You do the same thing, the other one reacts just the same way. And the interesting thing about this, it doesn't seem to make any difference how far apart the particles are. These particles are reacting instantaneously, immediately. There is no time between the action and the reaction of both of them. And we have been able to measure on this planet this instantaneous communication of up to 700 miles. These two particles will react to each other. Now, science and scientists have had a hard time with this concept. And Einstein, perhaps our greatest scientist ever, he could never accept it. He called this spooky action at a distance. He struggled his whole life to figure out some alternative way this could be happening. But this communication, like this, in this very strange world, to me, is pointing at I think an obvious fact for most people here, but I don't think it's obvious to most people in the world. This idea of oneness, that we are all part of the same. I am part of everything, and everything is a part of me. So it's obvious that these two particles, these twin photons, could communicate from one side of the universe to the other. Again, science really hasn't tried to figure this out. They haven't tried to explain it, because it's really hard to prove that oneness exists. But we know it does. But it's hard to live with. And there was a guy about 2,000 years ago who gave us this commandment called love your enemies. I think everybody knows this one. They at least remember this master teacher, Jesus, right? He said this, he told told us that's what we should do, and it seems to have been completely ignored. A whole bunch of religion is surrounding this guy. He's an amazing teacher. And how can you follow him if he tells you to do something and then you just in fact, you do the exact opposite? Well, it doesn't make any sense, right? How can you love an enemy? An enemy is somebody you hate, right? They want to kill you. So you have to kill them, right? Now, don't get me wrong, you need to learn to protect yourself because we live in a very difficult world. Very dangerous world. That's true. But killing another person for any reason at all, hurting anybody, if oneness is real, that means you're hurting yourself or killing a part of yourself. You're killing a part of God. It's not a good idea. So Jesus was trying to teach something that people couldn't really understand. In fact, we still don't understand it. I mean, I can talk about quantum mechanics for hours, and doesn't mean you're going to understand it, doesn't mean you can use and apply it. But love is something we really need to look at closely. And I thought Paulo Coelho in The Alchemist had a good slant on it. In that book, he says, when we love, we strive to become better than we are. We evolve. And our world becomes better or worse depending on whether we choose to evolve, to love, or not. So if we choose not to, if we choose to kill or hurt, we're going in the wrong direction, aren't we? But, come on, Jesus. How can we even begin to love our enemies? I believe that forgiveness is the way to do that. To me, it's obvious. But, I have to be honest here, most people don't do it. Get upset, we get very angry, and we hold on to resentment. And people want to forgive. They think it's a good idea, but they don't do it. Why? Because it's too hard. It takes too long. I'll get to that later. Or it was too bad. Can't forget that. But it doesn't have to be that way. There is an easier way. Now I've learned this process called radical forgiveness. What is radical forgiveness? Well, the best way I've learned to explain it is that when we talk about bad things happening to us, I think most people would agree that if you look back in the past and you think about things that have happened to you that you didn't like and you didn't want it to happen, but now you look at it now and you look at yourself and you say, well, maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe, in fact, things are a little bit better now. I'm in a better relationship, I have a better job, things are going better, or at least I've learned something from that experience. So most people would agree that when bad things happen, there may be a reason for that. And most people would agree with that. So radical forgiveness takes that concept that some things happen for a reason and just takes one more step. But it's a really big step. It says that not only do some things happen for a reason, everything happens for a reason. Everything. Now I know that's kind of like a bumper sticker here, because we can say that. But living that is, you just don't want to go there. because there's so many bad things in this world. So many bad things have happened or are happening right now. And to say that there's a perfection in that, you can't do it. So radical forgiveness does not demand that you believe it. What you do is you act as if maybe there might be a certain tiny percentage of a possibility that there might be a little perfection in the situation. That's all. Just have that. And a faith of a supreme being to some degree. And it works, just like that. But you have to do it. Me talking about it doesn't do a thing. All right, I could talk for hours about it, and I'm not going to. But talking about something doesn't make it happen. It's an active process. You have to do something. And it's a simple process. All you need to do is, here's the 5 stages. Tell the story. Feel the feelings. Collapse the story, reframe, and integrate. That's all you got to do. So simple. And I'm going to introduce you to a process that you can do in less than 10 minutes. So I brought the book. I didn't make this up. Colin Tipping wrote Radical Forgiveness, Making Room for the Miracle. Okay, you can buy this. And this is the companion CD that goes with it, the 13 steps. I'll talk more about this in a minute. And you can go to the website and do it and all that, but I'm going to talk about, I'd like to make it very easy for people to do this. So I want to get to that in a minute. But I'd like to show you the process a bit within my own life, give you some perspective. Now, this is take me a little while to explain it, but it's just a simple thing, okay? It's my mailbox story. And it's not a big deal, but that's the way you want to start this. You don't want to do it on some really jugular issue. You want to start on little easy things, like that person cutting you off in traffic or something like that. But it does work no matter what. Okay, so my story is that I have to go back a little bit. So about 3 or 4 months ago, the city was working on a drainage project on my street. And it just so happens that a lot of the work that they were doing was right in front of my house. And so they messed up the property in front of my house and then tore up the street. And it's a long story of all the things that did. Big equipment's on my property, lots of noise, lots of aggravation, all kinds of stuff. It didn't really bother me that much. I mean, I knew it was coming for the last few years, and that's what they do. And they did that, and then at the end of the project, they had messed up the road so badly they had to pave it. So we have a brand new paved road, and it looks really good. So it's the last day of the paving of the road. I didn't know it was the last day when this happened. But the very last day, at the very end of the day, by the way, when you're paving a road, you've got to park somewhere, the people doing the work. So, of course, they're parking on my property and all that. And so one of the workers, I just heard a loud bang, and then another bang, and then looked out my window, and there's my mailbox is laying on the ground. And there's a truck that backed into it and broke the mailbox. And I watched, and the guy got out of the truck, looked at the mailbox, got back into his truck, and drove away. And by the time I got outside, everybody was gone. Okay. So I didn't think that much of it was a big deal, because they're always coming back for the last 3 or 4 months, right? They didn't come back the next day. Nobody showed up. Nobody to talk to. The next day, somebody shows up to pick up a piece of equipment that happened to be parked on my property. And I went out and talked to them, and they said, oh, yeah, they showed the mailbox, and they said, well, we'll talk to somebody about it. I never heard anything. So I'm still waiting. So 2 or 3 days later, I tried to call the city, and I didn't know who to talk to. I knew who I wanted to talk to, but I just left a message saying, please call me, whoever's responsible for this project, please. So 2 or 3 days later, nobody calls. So I said, okay, we'll just forget about the whole thing. I'll just fix it myself. Because, I mean, I could easily do that. That was never a problem of fixing it. I just wanted, I mean, they broke it, right? So shouldn't I do something? But so I kind of gave up. But during this whole process, what was happening inside of me, I wasn't paying attention to. I was just doing what I do. And when I have stuff that upsets me, I know it. I mean, I know it inside my body. But a lot of things are going on in my life. And so I'm working on all this stuff, literally working on all kinds of different things. And usually I know what's happening. I work on it, like with forgiveness or whatever else I have to do, and then the sensations or whatever I have go away. But things weren't going away. And so finally in one of my meditations, I was thinking, came through the meditation and said, wait a minute, you know, I never did any forgiveness on that jerk that broke my mailbox. I used the word jerk kindly, so I didn't really say that. But the point is that I just ignored it. I mean, to me it was a tiny thing. Like I said, I could fix it myself. But I realized I couldn't ignore it. So all I did said, okay, well, I'll do the 13 steps. Boom. Okay, that's it. That's all I did. Did I feel better? Yeah, maybe a little bit. But then the next day, I go out, well, we've had to buy the materials. It was less than $20 for, all I needed was a new post and some concrete. And so we got to start the repair. And the first thing is to dig out the old, it would just crack the post in half. So we had to dig out the old post that was stuck in the concrete. And so luckily I had my son, he was out there helping me, and we start banging away on the concrete, chiseling it out. And then all of a sudden, this white truck drives up right in front of us with the City of Augusta logo on it and parks right in front of my property. But he wasn't coming to see me. He didn't know anything about my mailbox. He was just coming to do an inspection on across the street for some imperfection there. And out of the car gets Jeff, the engineer, who I got to know. And I went over and introduced myself, explained to him what had happened, had a nice conversation with him, not about only about the mailbox, but also about the project. And then he comes over and looks at what we're doing. He says, you know, I have a better chisel than that. So he goes to his truck, gets his chisel out, and he comes, gets on his hands and knees and starts banging away at the concrete himself. And I'm surprised. The whole thing is a shock. Where did he come from? I'd seen this guy for the last couple years around my property, but I never was able to talk to him. I was curious to talk to him because I wanted to know what they were going to do and how they was going to do it. But it didn't matter if I did or not. And now it really mattered. And I finally got somebody that I could talk to, and there wasn't anything he could do. I mean, we'd already decided, you know, had everything in order, but he helped. And so it was a really tiny thing, but it was kind of like a miracle that he shows up at the perfect time when we just started out there. Stuff happens all the time. If you practice this process, because when you open yourself up, you change your energy. In other words, when you forgive, you change your energy and you open yourself up to all these possibilities that could happen when you let go of your story. Now, this 13-step CD is easy, it's quick, simple, and you don't have to talk to anybody about it. Just listen to it. Now, Colin, the guy that wrote the book, he's narrating the CD, and so he talks a lot about the process. So really, you don't even have to listen to me today. All you have to do is pick this up listened to it, and he explains how the process works and a lot of other things. Also has a lot of music on there. He uses music to integrate the process of the forgiveness and all that. So it's a really interesting work that he's doing, and this has been around a long time. And I've used it I can help somebody with radical forgiveness, anytime, but I usually just give this to somebody that already knows how to do the process, and I give it, this is like a support thing. But I'm beginning to think, in fact, what I would like to initiate is just give everybody this to start with, and then you'll learn how to do it. And maybe develop a habit of forgiveness. Because it's so easy. And literally, it's less than 10 minutes. If you can just go right to the 13-step process, listen to that. All you do is you answer the questions in the process. Yes. You say yes 13 times. And then it's over. That's all you got to do. It's amazingly simple. Now, you can make it more complex if you want to. Like I say, there's lots of different things that people want to delve into it. But what I'm hopeful is that maybe you get to understand, because it's very clear when you go through this process that when you're all true forgiveness is actually self-forgiveness. And our enemy is actually ourself. So now Jesus was a genius, wasn't he? Because he's saying, love yourself. But because we're all one, we have to love everybody else too. You can do this. If we can develop a forgiveness habit, we can assist the world to evolve. And you become a vital factor in co-creating positive change on our world and for our world. Thank you.